Every American kid learns the same story. No taxation without representation. Angry colonists dumped tea in a harbor, started a war over taxes. Except, that's not really what happened. The colonists paying the outrageous British taxes? They were paying less tax than the guy back home in London. So if it wasn't about the money, what was the American Revolution actually about? And here's the twist nobody tells you. Even the way the revolution was financed created a myth that Americans have been repeating wrong for 250 years. Let's get into it. Rewind to 1763. Britain just won the French and Indian War. Big win. Also, big bill. Fighting a war across an entire continent isn't cheap, and Britain's national debt had basically doubled. Someone had to pay for it. And Parliament looked at the American colonies and thought, reasonable enough, we just spent all this money defending you, time to chip in. So they passed the Sugar Act in 1764. Then the Stamp Act in 1765, a tax on paper, newspapers, playing cards, legal documents, basically anything with ink on it. Then the Townshend Acts in 1767, taxing glass, paint, lead, and tea. On paper, this looks like classic empire squeezes its colony for cash. That's the story everyone remembers. But here's where it gets interesting. No taxation without representation is the most famous line of the whole revolution. It's on murals, textbooks, license plates. It makes it sound like the colonists were furious about how much they were taxed. Historians who've actually crunched the numbers found something almost embarrassing. Colonists in America were taxed far less than ordinary people living in Britain itself. We're talking a fraction of what a Londoner paid every year. So if the tax bill was smaller, why the outrage? Because the fight was never about the amount. It was about the principle. Colonists had 0 elected representatives in Parliament. 0 vote on these laws. 0 say. Parliament could tax them, regulate them, and legislate for them, and the colonists had no seat at that table at all. That's the actual grievance. Not, this tax is too high. It was, you don't get to tax us without asking us. Consent, not cash. Think about it like this. Imagine your landlord raising your rent by literally 1 rupee, but you find out he did it without ever letting you have a say in any decision about the building, ever. The rupee isn't the problem. The, you don't get a voice, is the problem. That's colonial America in the 1760s. Colonists started organizing, boycotts, protests, a group called the Sons of Liberty stirring things up town by town. Tensions kept boiling. In 1770, a street argument between colonists and British soldiers in Boston spiraled into soldiers firing into a crowd, killing 5 people. Colonial newspapers didn't waste a second. They branded it the Boston Massacre, and used it as propaganda gold. Then came the Tea Act of 1773. Britain gave one company, the East India Company, a special monopoly to sell tea directly to the colonies, undercutting local merchants. Colonists in Boston responded by boarding 3 ships and dumping over 92,000 pounds of tea into the harbor. The Boston Tea Party. Britain hit back hard with a set of laws colonists called the Intolerable Acts, shutting down Boston's port, stripping away self-governance in Massachusetts. By 1775, shots were fired at Lexington and Concord. The war had officially begun. Here's the part that should have made this a short war, not a long one. America had almost nothing going for it. No standing army, no navy to speak of, no national bank, no established government. Just 13 colonies trying to coordinate against the most powerful military on earth. George Washington took command of a Continental army that was underfed, underpaid, and under-equipped. Winters like the one at Valley Forge nearly finished the war before the fighting even did. What kept it alive wasn't just grit, it was money. Or more specifically, a financial experiment that would go horribly, famously wrong. To pay for the war, the Continental Congress didn't have taxing power the way a real government does. So they did the only thing they could, they printed money. Continental dollars. In 1775, about $2 million worth were in circulation. By 1779, that number had exploded past 190 million. And the value of each dollar collapsed right along with it, falling to just a penny or 2 of real worth. Prices went insane. A suit of clothes that used to cost a few dollars suddenly cost $1 million Continental dollars. The phrase, not worth a Continental, entered the English language right there, meaning something completely worthless, and honestly, we still hear echoes of that phrase today. For 250 years, the story everyone told was simple: Congress panicked, printed too much money, and wrecked their own currency through sheer financial mismanagement. But newer research digging into the actual bond structure of the Continental dollar tells a messier story. Some economic historians argue the Continental wasn't just reckless paper money, it functioned more like a bond, a promise of future repayment, and it actually held up reasonably well for years. It was a specific financial miscalculation by Congress much later in the war, not blind money printing from day one, that sent the whole system off a cliff. Either way, the lesson is the same one: governments keep relearning throughout history. When you can't tax your way to war funding, printing your way there comes with a bill of its own. The war ended in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris. America had its independence, and also a mountain of debt, both from the war itself and from that collapsed currency. That debt crisis didn't just disappear. It became the reason the United States needed a stronger central government in the first place, eventually shaping the financial system built by Alexander Hamilton just a few years later. So the story that started with, "we won't be taxed without a voice," ended with a brand new country immediately needing to figure out taxes, debt, and currency all over again, this time on its own terms. Funny how that works, right? A revolution that started because of tax policy ended up needing its own tax policy within a decade. If you found this one interesting, this is actually the first video in a new series we're building, breaking down the money and myths behind history's biggest wars. Follow along, because there's a lot more of these coming. Drop a comment: what's a well-known fact about a war or historical event that you always assumed was true? We might just fact-check it next.